Go ahead, it's going.
Okay, great. Well, good evening. Looks like we're just about 6 straight up. My name is Brent Young. I'm a regional extension specialist with Colorado State University Extension. I'm talking to you from the regional office here in Sterling, Colorado. I'm pleased tonight to have as a co-presenter Tiffany Ariel. Tiffany is a program specialist with the Colorado Office of the Farm Service Agency. And between the two of us tonight, we're going to give you kind of an update as to what's happening with the Title I Farm Bill and the decisions that you need to make by the 16th of this month. And so at this point, I'm going to turn the program over to Tiffany. She has a PowerPoint that she'll go through with you, talk to you a little bit about the mechanics of the agriculture risk coverage program and the price loss coverage program. When Tiffany finishes with her presentation, I will then talk a little bit about what we expect each program to pay in 2019 and 2020, looking at the top 5 crops here in Colorado. We are utilizing a Zoom webinar program, and so in order to conserve bandwidth so that we can get as many people on this webinar as possible, the only people who have audio and video capabilities are Tiffany and myself. And so as a attendee, the way for you to ask questions is through the chat function. And if you kind of scroll down around your screen, you should see a chat box. You want to make sure that when you type in a chat message that you've clicked on the option for that chat message to be viewed by all panelists and attendees. Type that message right in, hit the enter button, and then we'll all be able to see that message. While Tiffany is going through her slides, I'll monitor our chat box, and as we see questions come in, I'll stop and repeat the question for Tiffany to answer. And we will be recording this webinar, and at the end of the evening we'll give you an email address where you could send a message and request the link to the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides that I'll be providing for you. Unfortunately, the slides Tiffany will be covering tonight are not available. Those aren't available for use per FSA regulations, but we'll let you have access to my slides if you'd have an interest in those. So with that, I'm going to mute my mic and we'll let Tiffany go ahead and begin our program tonight.
Thank you, Brent. As you said, my name is Tiffany Ariel. I am an agricultural program specialist with the Colorado Farm Service Agency in Denver, Colorado. And yes, we cannot offer our PowerPoint slides, but a lot of our slides come from the fact sheets. And so those fact sheets are made available on our USDA webpage and will be available through that email as well. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right on in, and we're going to be covering the Agricultural Risk Coverage Program and the Price Loss Coverage Program. So this is our timeline for the 2018 Farm Bill. The 2019 enrollment began on September 3rd, and it runs through March 16th. March 15th is technically on a Sunday, so we do take applications through March 16th. We are also doing our 2018 ARC PLC payments. Those were completed between January 1 of 2019 and January 31st of 2020. Now, the reason some of these payments take a little bit longer is because some of those prices, like for certain rices and other grains, they're not available until mid-January. So that's why you might get a wheat payment in October, but you might not get your rice payment until January. It's because of when that data is available to us. So we are also doing the 2020 enrollment from October 1 of 19 through June 30th of September of 2020. Additionally, we are doing our 2020 yield update, and that began on October 1, and it runs through September 30th of 2020. So right now, you could go into your county office and you can do your 2019 enrollment, your 2020 enrollment, and your 2020 yield updates. So the covered commodities have not changed from the 2014 Farm Bill, with the exception of seed cotton. However, there's only a couple farms in all of Colorado, maybe about 5 farms that actually have seed cotton, so that's not relevant to them. So the covered commodities, those pretty much have not changed from the 14 Farm Bill to this 18 Farm Bill. Now, we do have some general eligibility provisions. There is a payment limit of $125,000. We do require the adjusted gross income limitation of $900,000. So what that means is for the 2020 program year, we would be looking at your 16, 17, and 18 taxes. And if you average those 3 years, as long as they're under $900,000, then you are eligible for the 2020 year. We also want to make sure that you're actively engaged in farming and that you meet our cash rent tenant rules. And then also that you are highly erodible or wetland compliant, which is an FSA as well as an NRCS requirement. So we have 2 criteria or 2 steps. We have an election and then we have an enrollment. So the election is when a producer is choosing between the agricultural risk coverage at the county level, at the individual level, or the price loss coverage. So we're just going to dive right in to your 3 election options. So right now through March 16th, you can make your election. Now your election for 2019 is going to be the same as it was for 2020. So if you choose to have PLC for your 2019 election, that means that your 2020 program is going to be PLC as well. However, starting with the program year 21, from October 1 through March 15th, you could change between the ARC County, ARC Individual, and PLC. So 19 and 20, you'll have the same election decision. But then in 21, 22, or 23, if you want to change to a different program, ARC County, ARC Individual, or PLC, you have that option to do so. You don't have to make a change, but you have that option in those 3 years, which is a lot different than the 14 Farm Bill where you made your 1 election and it was for the whole Farm Bill. So who must sign to this election? So all producers on the farm with a share or interest in those cropland acres. So all those producers must sign. Now, again, the 2019 and 2020 election decisions are the same. So if you have a producer who farmed it for 2019, and say Brent farmed it for 2019, and then I come in 2020, I can't make an election decision. Whatever Brent chose for 2019, that is the election decision I will have to live with in 2020. However, in 21, I could choose to change that election decision if I wanted to. So what are your options? We have 3 options. We have the ARC County, we have ARC Individual, and we have PLC. So for ARC County and PLC, this is on a commodity by commodity basis. So on one farm, you could have wheat in ARC County and you could have soybeans in PLC. It's based on the crop per farm. However, with ARC Individual, that is by farm. So all of your commodities on that farm would be in ARC Individual. Now, if you had 5 farms, you could put 3 of them in ARC Individual and the other 2 in ARC County or PLC. So ARC Individual is by farm, and then ARC County and PLC is by your commodity. So once you make the decision between those 3 programs, then you're going to be enrolling, which is when you're going to be doing your shares per crop on that ARC PLC contract. So your enrollment is on a crop by crop basis, and you can choose to enroll them or to not enroll them. We also have a nice multi-year contract enrollment. So this is for 2019 only, where you'll sign your 2019 contract, and as long as there's no change to your farm, that 2019 contract is going to roll forward to 20, 21, 22, and 23, which means that you wouldn't have to come in and sign every single year for a new contract. However, if there is a change, then that multi-year contract will be terminated. So the changes are a farm's constitution, if a producer with a share greater than 0 changes, if you decide, say in 21, to change from ARC County to PLC, that cancels that multi-year rollover. Previously, the PLC base yield update was going to be a reason to terminate, which is that second bullet there. However, that is no longer a reason. That just changed within the last couple weeks. So just if you decide to have a farm combination or a farm division or any of the owners or operators change, those things would cancel that multi-year contract. So once that multi-year contract is canceled, the rollover just stops. So for example, if you signed your contract in 2019, but then in 2022, the farm has a division on it. Well, then in 22 and in 23, the producer will have to sign new contracts. However, the 19, the 20, and the 21 contracts are still fine. The multi-year contract only cancels from when the change occurred forward. So if you have a farm division in 22, then in 22 and in 23, you'll have to do new contracts, but your prior years will be completely fine. So when can you do these enrollments? You can enroll your 2019 now through March 16th. You can enroll the 2020 now through June 30th. And then for 21, 22, and 23, those will be October 1 through March 15th. Now, I know that these dates are a lot different than what you saw in the 14 Farm Bill, which is when we went through August 30th or August 1st. And the reason that's changed is because we want to line up more with other agencies, such as RMA's reporting deadlines. That way it can just be more consistent for the producers, so that you just have that time frame in your mind, like, hey, it's this time of year. I know I need to go to RMA, I need to go to FSA. And that way we're just kind of lining up with other agencies, and we're not having deadlines in random parts of the year that don't correlate with anybody else. So those are just our general rules of when you make your election, choosing between ARC County, ARC Individual, and PLC, and when you do your enrollment. So now I'm going to cover each of those different election options. We're going to talk about ARC County, then we're going to talk about the PLC, which is the price loss coverage, and then we're going to go into ARC Individual a little bit. So starting with ARC County, this is an income support program. So it's based on a benchmark revenue and a guarantee, and it's compared to your actual revenue. So this is just supposed to help you with your out-of-pocket loss or a shallow loss. So when that actual crop revenue falls below our guarantee, and our guarantee is 86% of our benchmark, that's when you're going to see an ARC payment. So that benchmark is based on the 5 prior years to the preceding year. So this is a change from the 14 Farm Bill, which was the 5 preceding years from the actual year. And the reason is so that we get more data and more consistent data so that we can make those payments to you. So for example, for the 2019 crop year, our benchmark revenue is going to be based on 2013 through 2017 years. So if the actual revenue is less than this guarantee, which is 86% of that benchmark, that's when you're going to see a payment for the ARC program. Now, the ARC program does have 2 election options. You can do it at the county level or at the individual level. So doing it at the county level means that you're using county level yields. If you do it at the individual level, you are doing it on your individual farm yields, which means that you're going to have to tell FSA what those yields are if you're doing it at the individual farm level. As we mentioned earlier, ARC County and PLC can be on the same farm. because it's by commodity. So you can have soybeans in Ark County and wheat in PLC. However, Ark Individual is for all commodities on that farm. So if you choose Ark Individual, that's for the whole farm, whereas Ark County and PLC is by commodity. So the Ark County, this is going to be income support, and it's at the county level. So with this, you do not technically have to plant a covered commodity, and there is no requirement to report your production or your yield by farm, because we're using the county yields to determine those values. Ark Individual, on the other hand, it's income support, and it's at the farm level, at your producer level. And it's for all of your acreage planted on all farms enrolled in Ark Individual in that state. So you do technically have to plant the crop in order to be able to get a payment for Ark Individual, because this is based on what you're planting. So if you have wheat-based acres on your farm, but you're planting soybeans, if Ark County triggers a payment for soybeans, you're not going to get that payment because your base is in wheat. However, if you chose Ark Individual, even though you have wheat-based acres, you're going to get paid on the soybeans because that's what you planted. So because we're paying you based on what you plant, you do have to report your production to that county office. So what are the differences? So with Ark County, you can have Ark County and PLC on the same farm for different commodities. Again, Ark Individual is for that whole farm. Now for Ark County, our payments are issued at 85% of those base acres, and you don't have to plant the commodity. Now for Ark Individual, the payments are issued on 65%, and you do have to plant the commodity. Now, a lot of producers see that 85% and 65%, and they say, well, why would I choose Ark County or Ark Individual when I can get 20% more with Ark County? The reason is because if you chose Ark Individual, yes, it's paying 65%, but it's paying on your farm yields, not county yields. And it's paying you on what you actually plant. So yes, it's 20% less, but again, it's paying you for your farm yields on the crops that you are actually planting. Now there is an Ark County guarantee. Again, this is that 86% of the benchmark revenue that we discussed earlier. So for 2019, your benchmark again is 2013 through 2017. And this guarantee is going to be recalculated every year. So in 2020, your guarantee will be based on the 2014 through 2018 years. So you're going to get an Ark payment when that actual crop revenue is less than that guarantee for that commodity. That's when a payment is going to be triggered for Ark County. Again, Ark County does not require production or yield reports because you don't technically have to plant that crop in order to potentially get a payment for it. You can plant soybeans, but if your base is wheat, if Ark County wheat triggers a payment, you are going to get paid on those wheat-based acres, even though you never planted wheat. In the 2019 through 2023, so the life of the Farm Bill, it's going to be based on the physical location of the tract. So if you have a farm, and let's say that one tract is in Yuma County, and the other tract is in Kit Carson or Kiowa County, we're going to pay you based on where that tract is physically located, so that you are getting those county yields. All right, so unless Brent sees any questions pop up on the chat, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Price Loss Coverage Program, PLC for short.
No questions at this point, Tiffany.
Thank you, sir. So PLC is price protection, also known as income loss program. So you're going to get a payment for PLC when the price of that commodity falls below the reference price. Now, these reference prices, they're listed on that fact sheet that you can get from that email address that we'll give you later today. And these prices are not going to change. They're going to be the same for the life of the farm bill. So example, barley, it's $4.95 a bushel. So these prices are not going to change. So when your effective reference price, and then you minus your effective price, that equals your PLC payment rate. So this is your reference price. So when your effective reference price, you minus that by your effective price, and that's how you get your PLC payment rate. So we're going to take that rate, we're going to multiply it by the PLC yield times your payment acres, your base acres, and that's going to give us your payments. Now, notice that we are including your PLC yield in calculating your PLC payments. We're going to get into the PLC yield a little bit later in this presentation, so just keep that in the back of your mind that you might want to update your PLC yield because it can affect your PLC payment amount. So when will a farm receive a PLC payment? When that market year average price falls below the effective reference price. And PLC is just price protection only. It's not dealing with yields, it's dealing with price. For Ark County, you're going to get a payment when the actual revenue for the base acreage falls below the guarantee, and that's going to be income support at the county level. Now, the last option is the agricultural risk coverage individual option. We've talked about it a little bit so far, but we're going to get really into it here in just a second. So Ark Individual, it provides income support on the producer individual farm level. So these payments are going to be based on that farm yield, not your county yield. Now we do blend your irrigated and your non-irrigated yields, so just be aware of that. And with Ark Individual, you do technically have to plant the crop. However, you only really have to plant 0.01 acres of that crop. So if you have 20 acres of cropland, and let's just say 20 base acres of wheat, and you plant 1 acre of corn, you could be eligible for 20 base acres of corn for a payment because you planted at least 0.01 acres of that commodity. So you do have to plant the commodity with Ark Individual. However, you only have to plant 0.01 acres. So producers who are enrolled in Ark Individual, if they do not share in the farm's planted covered commodities, then they're not going to be eligible for an Ark Individual payment. And we determine if they're eligible based on what they plant, based on the information that you are providing to the FSA office when you do your crop reports on that 578. So we determine if you planted covered commodities, who has shares in those, based on the information that you are reporting to the county office. And it's for those 22 covered commodities, regardless of whether the base acres are for that commodity. So if your base acres are wheat, but you plant soybeans, your payment would be on soybean acres because that is what you planted. Even though your base acres are wheat, this Ark Individual is based on what you actually planted. So because of this, because we're using your farm yields and your production, you do have to certify that information with the county office. So you're going to certify this on a CCC 863. It's a beautiful little form, and the county office will help you to know which form it is and will help you to complete it. And you're just going to certify your production for that year. So you'll certify it for 2019, and you're going to certify it for the benchmark years because that's what we're going to be basing your benchmark on. So you'll certify it for 19 and then also your yields for 13 through 17. And you're going to do this by July 15th of every year. So the yield is by farm number. We do need certified yields, so we just recommend using RMA. You tend to already have your yield certified with your crop insurance, so if you can give us that information, that's perfect. And that yield is going to stay with the farm. So even if the land is sold or an operator changes, you can't take your yield with you to another farm. That yield is going to be tied to the physical location of the farm where it was established. So the yields are going to be based on if it was planted in that year. So if you did plant the crop, you, the producer, is going to either certify to a 0 yield or your actual yield. Now, if our yield is higher than your yield, we're going to use ours because we want to get you the best yield possible. So if you did not plant the crop in the benchmark year, so between 2013 and 2017, if you didn't plant the crop, you're going to leave it blank, and we're just going to give you an assigned yield, which is the county yield. So if you planted your crop in 13, 15, and 17, we would put those yields in for you, and we would leave 14 and 16 blank, and we'd use that county yield for those 2 years. So those are our 3 program options, our 3 program election options. You can have ARC Individual, you can have ARC County, or you can have PLC. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier about the PLC yield update. So this is an important thing. Even if you're thinking that you want to do ARC County or ARC Individual, still update your PLC yield, because you might decide in 21 or in 22 to change to PLC. And this is a one-time opportunity to update your PLC yield for this farm bill. Previously, we've updated the yields in 1985 for all commodities. We updated them in 2002 for a few of them, in 2008 for pulse crops, and in 2014, we updated it for all covered commodities as well. So we're doing that again, and it's going to be effective for 2020, and it'll be effective for 2020, 21, 22, and 23. But this is a one-time opportunity. So it is the owner's choice to update that PLC yield. Now, the operator or the tenant, they can provide the yields to us, but an owner has to sign. An FSA power of attorney can work. So if you are an operator and you have power of attorney for that owner, you can sign to this PLC yield update. Additionally, you're going to make the decision to update by commodity. So if you have corn and wheat yields and base acres, but you've only been planting corn, you haven't been planting wheat, then you're probably only going to update your corn yields because that's the only information you have. So it's by commodity, and it's going to be effective for 2020 through 2023. So you can keep your current yields, in which case there's nothing you need to do, or you can update your yields. And we do it at 90% of the planted acreage minus yield history multiplied by a ratio established at the national level. That's a lot of government jargon right there, so I'm going to break it down for you in just a moment. So the years that we're looking at for these PLC yield updates is going to be 2013 through 2017. And we're going to be doing a simple average and excluding 0 planted years. So this is that ratio established by the national office. So this isn't going to change. Now, if you'll notice corn, that PLC yield factor is 0.9. And we're going to use corn in our example here. So this is an example of this screen that we would see at FSA, and a similar screen would be printed on the form for you. So you see the substitute yield at the bottom, and then the actual yields up top. So you're going to provide us with those actual yields. So say in 2013, your yield was 250 bushels, in 14, 250, in 15, 240, 16, 240, and 17, 260. So that total is 1,240. And if you average those together, that's 248. Now, we have a yield factor of 0.9 because, again, corn has that yield factor of 0.9. So we take your average yield of 248, we multiply it by 0.9, and that gives us 223.2. So we take that and multiply it by 90% of those planted acres, and it gives us a yield of 201. So the new recalculated yield is 201. And on this farm, the previous yield was 189. So we're going to go ahead and update that PLC yield because it's higher than what was already there. Now, if that recalculated yield is less than the existing yield, our system won't even let us proceed because we want to give you the best yield that we possibly can. So yes, we kind of factor it down and multiply it down, but as long as the recalculated yield is higher than the existing yield, we'll move forward with that. So again, it is the owner's decision to either retain or update those crop yields, and it's by crops. You could update the yield for corn or for wheat or for one or the other. It doesn't matter if you chose ARC County or ARC Individual or PLC, you can still update your PLC yield. And we recommend doing this because you can only do it once for this farm bill, and we don't know if we're going to be able to do it in the next farm bill. So if you can do it, go ahead and do it now. Now, only one owner of the farm has to sign. Again, power of attorney does work. The PLC yield is only used for PLC payment purposes, so it's not going to affect ARC County payments or ARC individual payments. It is made at the farm level, and it can be revised up until the PLC yield deadline. So if you planted corn in 13 through 17, but you can't find your 13 and 14 yield records, and then you decide to update 15, 16, and 17, but then you come back and you find 13 and 14 records, you can still update that PLC yield through the deadline of September 30th of this year. So if the yields are not updated by September 30th, or if there's a disagreement by one or more owners of that PLC yield and they haven't come to an agreement by September 30th, then the yield is just going to stay what it currently is. And our last little topic is fruits and vegetables. So if you plant fruits or vegetables or wild rice on those payment acres, your base acres, then we do actually have to reduce your payment for an acre for acre reduction. So basically, if you have 20 base acres and 20 cropland acres, and you plant 5 acres of watermelons, we're going to reduce your payment acres by 5 acres because you planted 5 acres of watermelon on those base payment acres. Now, if you had 20 base acres, but 25 cropland acres, and you plant 5 acres of watermelon, we're going to attribute that watermelon to your non-payment acres first. So then you would still have 20 base acres or 20 payment acres because you only planted 5 acres of watermelon on those 25 cropland acres. So if you plant fruits, vegetables, or wild rice, we do an acre for acre reduction if they're planted on payment acres, on those base acres. But we will subtract the fruit, vegetable, and wild rice from your non-payment acres first, and then to your payment acres. And again, this is just that timeline kind of summing up. We're doing our 2019 election and enrollment now through March 16th. We're doing the 2020 enrollment through June 30th. And we're doing our 2020 yield update through September 30th. So do we have any questions? If you want to submit questions through that group chat, I'm happy to answer them. I'll turn it over to Brent here in a moment. I'll stay on the line so that if you have questions towards the end of the call after Brent's presentation, we can certainly address your questions at that point as well. And you can also email them to Brent or myself, and we'll get your questions answered. All right, if there's no more questions, I think I'll turn it over to Brent.
Okay, Tiffany, I did have a question here. The question said something about reducing payment acres. If the person that submitted the question could maybe clarify that a little bit, we should be able to hopefully get an answer for the question.
So the only time we're going to be reducing your payment acres is when you plant fruits, vegetables, or wild rice on those payment acres. Does that help answer that question?
Okay, I don't see a further clarification there. I'll keep watching the chat in case we get that. Just to double check, Tiffany, you see my Farm Bill decisions PowerPoint. Is that on the screen now?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. Well,
And
Tiffany,
I'll monitor the chat box while you're doing your presentation. And thank you all again for being a part of this presentation. And as I said before, I'll stay on the call after, so that way you can ask any questions to myself or Brent that come up. Thank you all.
great, Tiffany. Thanks for the informative first part of the program. Again, we felt it was important for all of you to be aware of how the programs work. Tiffany did a great job explaining those. I'm going to concentrate now again looking at what we think will be potential payments for the 19 and 20 crop year. Again, I'm going to look at the top crops produced here in Colorado, and we'll take a look at those crops as we go. So again, I'm a regional extension specialist. My area of specialty is agriculture and business management. My major responsibility is to help farmers and ranchers manage risk. We know that agriculture is a very risky business, and certainly one of the ways that we can mitigate some of that production and price risk is through the Title I Farm Bill programs that we're talking about this evening. Just want to mention a website that we have that's got a lot of good information. I won't spend a lot of time on this website tonight, but I would recommend that you just Google or use any other search engine. If you'll Google CSU ABM, you'll get to our website. Again, lots of great information. I encourage you, once you get on the website, to bookmark it, and would encourage you to go back time and time again. I think there's some good information there for you. So again, I wanted to organize this part of the presentation tonight, looking at the top program crops grown in Colorado. Those top crops are wheat. We have a little over 2 million acres of wheat in the state of Colorado. Corn is next with 1.3 million acres of corn. Grain sorghum is a distant third at a little over 346,000 acres. Sunflowers comes in at about 80,000 acres, almost 81,000. And then finally, barley, a little over 65,000. So for our call tonight, we're going to be discussing wheat, corn, grain sorghum, sunflowers, and barley. If you have base acres and other crops and would like some information about those base acres, my email address will be posted at the end of the presentation tonight, and I'd certainly be more than willing to help you out with those crops. This information is from our most recent Census of Agriculture, dated 2017. So a quick disclaimer here, the following Farm Bill Title I program recommendations are based on general assumptions for each commodity. The results for individual farms and producers may vary. Individuals are encouraged to utilize the various online decision aids to make decisions based on their unique circumstances. Any results provided in this presentation are not a guarantee of a future FSA payment. And so again, these are going to be general in nature. I will refer to the online tools that are available. Later in the presentation, I'll give you the web address to get to those tools. I will also make this presentation available to you in the form of a handout. And again, we'll provide a web address or an email address at the end of the program where you could request this information. So let's start off with wheat. Our general recommendation for wheat is price loss coverage. If we look at our effective reference price for 2019 and 2020, that reference price is expected to be the $5.50, which is that statutory price in the Farm Bill. That's the same statutory reference price as with the 2014 Farm Bill. Currently, we're projecting the 2019 marketing year average to be $4.55 per bushel. And so then that would then calculate a projected PLC payment of 95 cents a bushel. And as Tiffany had alluded to earlier, you would take your base acres in wheat times 0.85 times your PLC yield times 0.95 cents per bushel, and that would be the way you would calculate a potential 2019 payment for PLC in wheat. The information to provide that recommendation was based on the most recent data we have available from FSA. This is actually a table that's put out every month. The projected market year average price is updated primarily as a result of updates to the World Agriculture Supply and Demand Report, or the WASDE. And so our most recent report, which is dated February 11th, 2020 for wheat, shows our marketing year of June 1 through May 31st. This final marketing year average price and PLC effective price won't be known until August 28th of 2020. As you can see there in column E, our reference price is $5.50 a bushel. As of February 11th, we were projecting a marketing year average price of $4.55. Our national loan rate is set by the Farm Bill, and so we would be looking at that projected price of $4.55. If we subtract $4.55 from the effective reference price of $5.50, that would show a PLC payment of 95 cents per bushel. So again, that's where our figures have come from. Toward the end of the presentation tonight, I'll give you the web address for these tables. Again, this is table 3. We'll be looking at it throughout the evening, rest of the evening, and I'll show you where you can find that information on a monthly basis. I'm going to stop for a minute. Any particular questions regarding expected payment, and at this point, the suggested program, Title I program for wheat. Okay, I'm going to move into corn. Our general recommendation for corn is we don't anticipate either an ARC County or PLC payment in either 2019 or 2020. I'll go through the reasoning behind this as we take a look at corn. If we look at our effective reference price, we anticipate it for 2019 and 2020 to be that statutory price in the Farm Bill, $3.70 a bushel. We'll take a look at the projected market year average on a chart in just a minute, but at this point, we are projecting the marketing year average for 2019 to be $3.85 a bushel. And so as Tiffany explained how price loss coverage works, when the marketing year average is above that effective reference price, no payment would be triggered. We expect the 2019-2020 ARC County benchmark price to be $3.70. Again, I'll show you how we've calculated that. And so the 2019-2020 ARC County payments would only trigger if county yields are significantly lower. And I'll give you some information about 7 counties here in northeastern Colorado, and we'll look at the actual numbers. I do have that data for every county in the state, and so if you're a corn producer in another county and would like for me to figure this trigger yield, let me know, and again, I can provide that for you. One of the things I'm finding, if I do the online tools, I see that they're showing a slight advantage toward PLC, even given the fact that we don't expect either an ARC County or PLC payment in 2019 or 2020. It appears that the online tools are favoring the possibility of a price decrease over the possibility of yield decreases on the county level. And so that's why they would show a slight advantage toward PLC. So let's take a look at the PLC side of corn. Again, I'm referring back to this table 3 that we'd looked at with wheat earlier. I've highlighted the corn row, you can see that the marketing year for corn is September 1st to August 31st. We won't have the final market year average price for corn until September 30th of 2020. As you can see, that effective price is $3.70, and currently we're projecting our market year average price to be $3.85. And again, if you look at column I, when we have a situation when that effective reference price is lower than the market year average, then we're projecting no payment for PLC for the 19 year, possibly also the market year 20. Obviously, we don't have projections for marketing year average price for the crop year 2020, so that could change. However, most market analysts, again, at this point at least, don't see much chance for that marketing year average to be significantly less than 370 for the 2020 marketing year, that's what it would take in order to generate a PLC payment for corn. If we take a look then at table 4, this is looking at the benchmark and actual price calculations for Art County. And we look at corn. We're looking at, again, that effective reference price of $3.70. As Tiffany had told us earlier in her presentation, in order to determine our benchmark price, we take an Olympic average of prices from 2013 through 2017. This Olympic average works such that we throw out the high price, we throw out the low price, and we average the 3 remaining prices. So as you can see from this chart, we had a final benchmark price in 2013 of 446. That was discarded because it was the high. And then we've had benchmark prices of 370 since that point. And so we know that based on prices currently, that the benchmark price for 2019 is going to be 370. I've mentioned to several people, even if we were to see extensive flooding in the Midwest and the Corn Belt didn't plant 1 acre of corn, and the price of corn in marketing year average in 2020 went to $10 a bushel, that would become the high. We would eliminate that and we'd still be at 370. So we know that we're going to have a final benchmark price in 2019 and 2020 of $3.70. Actually, it would take 2 to 3 years of prices higher than 370 to see that benchmark price increase dramatically. So as I mentioned, the discussion then with Art County, once we have an idea of what that benchmark price is going to be, we know that it's not going to change from 370 in 2019 or 2020. It actually becomes an issue of taking a look at what would have to happen to county yields to actually trigger a price. So what I have for you here is a chart, and again, I have this information for every county in the state and would be more than willing to provide it for those of you that don't have a farm in the counties that are listed here. But if you look at the far right box, and specifically in column D, what we have in column D is the guaranteed revenue per acre for 2019. And so I can take that guaranteed revenue per acre and divide it by what we think the market year average price will be, which at this point we're assuming it's going to be $3.85 per bushel. If I take that guaranteed revenue divided by that $3.85 per bushel, I can get a yield figure that would tell me how low county yields have to drop in order for an Art County payment to be realized. And so I've taken this information on this chart and I've summarized it for those 7 counties that are listed. So for example, the guaranteed for Yuma County for 2019 is $711.72. If I divide that by 385, that means that the 2019 county average yield in Yuma County would have to be low 184.86 bushels before a Art County payment would be triggered in 2019. As you go through the chart there, you notice that that guarantee decreases. As a guarantee decreases, so do the number of bushels below which a payment would be triggered. And so we don't anticipate a 2019 Ark County corn payment. We would probably see comparable data for 2020. And so at this point, the only thing that would probably generate payment for Ark County 2019 or 2020 would be a substantial decrease in the yield in these counties. Now, these are irrigated yields. I have had some producers with non-irrigated corn yields that have taken a look at this, and it may trigger a payment for those non-irrigated yields. And again, I do have access to that data if you are interested in that. Typically what we see in irrigated corn is that we don't see drastic yield differences year in and year out. Primarily the reason behind that is the irrigation typically takes one of the risk factors out of corn production, and that is lower yields due to lack of moisture. And so our typical greatest yield loss is typically due to hail in this part of the state. And it's very unlikely that we would have hail that would be countywide. Typically hailstorms are very localized and don't affect yields on a countywide basis. And so I do have the information. I notice there's a question, do I have the information for Weld County? And the answer is yes. And so again, at the end of the presentation, I'll give you my email address. And if you'll send me a request, I can provide the information for whatever county in the state you might have an interest in. So again, I want to stop any questions again regarding our thoughts as far as payments are concerned for corn as a program crop. Again, the feeling is probably no payment in 19 or 20. And again, the tools are showing a slight advantage toward PLC. Okay, without any questions, we're going to talk about grain sorghum. Grain sorghum, the general recommendation is PLC. That's based on the fact that our effective reference price in 19 and 20 will be that $3.95 a bushel. We're projecting a 2019 market year average of $3.35. So that would give a projected 2019 payment of 60 cents a bushel. Again, just as we had talked earlier with wheat, we don't have enough data to project the 2020 market year average, and so we're not able to make a recommendation for 20. But again, barring any real changes in supply and demand in sorghum, we expect the market year average price in 2020 to be comparable to that $3.35. Again, referring to Table 3, looking specifically at grain sorghum, marketing year for grain sorghum September 1st through August 31st. Just as we found in corn, we won't know the 2019 market year average and effective price until September 30th. That effective reference price in the Farm Bill is $3.95. Currently, we are projecting a marketing year average price of $3.35. So again, if you go all the way over to column I, that would provide for a projected PLC payment of 60 cents per bushel. And again, you would take your grain sorghum base times 85% times your PLC yield for grain sorghum times 60 cents a bushel to determine a potential PLC payment on grain sorghum for 2019. Sunflowers, a very interesting crop this year. It's really a toss-up between Ark County and PLC. When I run the online tools, they're really showing a toss-up between Ark County PLC. One tool will show a slight preference to PLC. The other one will show a slight preference to Ark County. The best advice at this time I can give you if you have sunflower base would be to run the online tools with your own farm data. I would run both the Texas A&M tool. If you go the University of Illinois, you're going to actually have to use a different tool, and I'll show you where that tool can be found. They're very quick online tool that resembles the screen of a smartphone. Is typically only put together, or it's only put together now to give you a recommendation for either corn, wheat, or soybeans. So you'd need to take a look at this little more detailed tool, which is actually an Excel spreadsheet that we'll refer you to in just a few minutes. So if we look at the effective reference price for sunflowers, it's 20.15 cents per pound. We're expecting the marketing year average to be 17.8 cents a pound. So that would result in a projected PLC payment of a little over 2 cents a pound. If we look at our benchmark price for PLC for Art County, or excuse me, benchmark price, Art County benchmark price for sunflowers is currently 0.257 pounds, which puts that benchmark price above what we think the marketing year average will be. So again, we can see that if we look at our table 3, again looking at the price loss coverage program, sunflower seeds have that same marketing year as corn. Again, our effective reference price is 20.15 cents per pound. We're projecting the marketing year average at this point to be 17.8 cents per pound. And so that would result in a PLC payment of 2.35 cents per pound. If we take a look at table 4, which looks at the Art County projections for sunflowers, again, we have that reference price, which doesn't change. We have those benchmark prices 2013 through 2018. We've eliminated the high price, which was 21.7 cents per bushel. We've eliminated one of the low prices, which was 20.15 cents per bushel. And so we're left with 21.4 and 20.15 cents per bushel prices, and that gives us that 2019 benchmark price of 20.57 cents per bushel. Again, the programs do show that either payment or either program, PLC or Art County, might make a payment. And again, that's why it's essential if you've got sunflower base for you to plug your own information into the tools to see which one will work best for you. Final program crop that we're going to cover tonight, as we again look at those crops that are the top 5 program crops here in Colorado, would be barley. I noticed that as I work with producers in the northeastern part of the state, we still have a few people that have a few acres of barley base. The general recommendation for barley would be the same as wheat, that the preferred program, Title I program, is going to be PLC. Again, looking at that 2019-2020 effective reference price of $4.95 a bushel. In 2019, we're currently projecting the marketing year average to be $4.60. So that would generate a PLC payment of 35 cents a bushel. And again, referring to table 3, you can see that we have the same general information as with wheat. You can see in column E, we have the effective price of $4.95. Column F is that current projected marketing year average of $4.60. And so if you look at column I, that would be generating a PLC payment rate of 35 cents per bushel. And again, just as we've talked about with wheat, you would take your number of barley base acres times 0.85 times your PLC yield for barley times 0.35 to determine what a total payment would be for your barley base. I want to stop right there and again give you a few minutes for any specific questions about the 5 commodities that we've covered so far this evening. Question: is there irrigated and dryland yield for each farm? you'll need to check, and I can help you with that information. Some counties have both irrigated base and dryland base, and some counties have irrigated and dryland calculations for Ark County. It's my understanding, and Tiffany, if I'm wrong with this, if you would pipe up, I'd appreciate it. But I know, especially for determining your Ark IC individual counties for our Ark IC yields for your farm, that it's you'll blend any irrigated, non-irrigated yields. And Tiffany's getting information about what county the participant's asking about.
And the irrigated, non-irrigated blended yields, that's going to be for Ark individual.
Okay.
And then for your PLC, that's going to be based on your farm. And then Ark County, based on the county that you're in, certain crops in certain counties have irrigated and non-irrigated yields. And the question was for Yuma County. So I'll respond in the IM. I have to look it up in my notes, which counties have which crops, and I'll respond to the chat.
Great. Thanks, Ariel. Or Tiffany, excuse me. So one of the things that I had mentioned earlier was that I would give you the links where you can find the information I presented for you tonight. What I've pulled up here is a screenshot of the FSA Ark PLC website. And typically, if you just Google or use any other search engine, FSA Ark PLC, it'll take you to, usually the first hit will take you to this website. Once you get on the website, this is the information that you're going to see. So the first place I'd like to direct you to is those tables, table 3 and 4. Again, as I mentioned, those are updated every month, so it would probably be a good idea for you to check back on those. If you click on the program data link here, then what you'll see is that program data link will then highlight itself, and then you can see there's another link to review program data. If you click on that, it'll give you a drop box where you can actually ask for program data by year. And so the 2019 data is available now. If you select 2019, then you'll have access to a lot of information, actually those tables that I've shared with you, and then that Excel spreadsheet where we looked at those, the data for Ark County for those various counties as it related to corn. And so, again, some very important information to help you navigate through the Title I programs. Another link that I would call your attention to is the one that's right beside program data, that resources link. If you click on it, you're going to get that highlighted link, and you're going to see some additional information. Your yield update calculator and a tool that will generate that CCC 867 form. That's what you need in order to update your PLC yields, as Tiffany had mentioned earlier. The other important information at this resource tab, you can see those web tools. So the URL for both the Texas A&M and the University of Illinois tool can be accessed on the FSA Ark County PLC website by clicking on that resource tab. One of the pieces of information you'll need to have for either one of those programs is your FSA Form 156EZ. Here's an example of one from a farm in Logan County. This information can be obtained at your local FSA office. The important information you'll need to know, information about your crop base, what commodity the base is established, or what commodities. It could be multiple commodities on the same FSA farm, the number of base acres, and your PLC yield. The Texas A&M tool also asks for you to put in your farm number, FSA farm number, that you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the page, and that'll help you track multiple FSA farms with that particular tool. Just a little bit about each one of the tools if you haven't used them before. The Texas A&M tool will allow you to do a PLC acreage update. The University of Illinois tool does not do that. In terms of program decision, the Texas A&M tool will give you information for the 2019 and 2020 crop years. The University of Illinois will take you 2019 through 2023 or the life of the Farm Bill. Price selection, the Texas A&M tool gives you two choices. It gives you the FAPRI or the Food Ag Policy and Research Institution best guess at the time, or you can put in your own choice for prices. The University of Illinois tool actually has 4 predetermined levels. You have to select one of the 4. Payment data, the Texas A&M tool will give you one estimated payment rate for the total payment for your FSA farm. That's based on the total number of base acres, PLC yield, the information that you put into the tool. The University of Illinois tool actually provides a payment distribution, and it's going to calculate a payment per acre. So they do look at those that payment data a little differently. I would tell you that the Texas A&M tool will help you make decisions on any program crop. The University of Illinois tool is restricted to just corn, wheat, and soybeans. I will discuss another tool from the University of Illinois in just a few slides that'll allow you to do all program crops. Considerations when using the web tools. I know that this makes my friends from the excuse me, FSA office a little nervous. As Tiffany mentioned, you do have until March 16, 2020 before you've got to make a decision. It's March 16th, as she mentioned, because the 15th falls on a Sunday in 2020. I know that several of you probably have already had your FSA appointment. You've already made your decision. If you choose to change that decision, you have until the 16th to do so. Those web tools are updated as more information becomes available. We probably have the final update on those tools. I don't expect any additional information to become available. So running those tools now, you probably have the best information available. Again, our suggestion is to run both tools, make a comparison, and then consider setting up accounts. That helps you save data and return the tools as they're updated. So if you haven't run the tools, my recommendation would be to run them as soon as possible. Again, you've got all the updated information with those. I don't anticipate we're going to have any real change in those tools between now excuse me, and the sign-up deadline, which is March 16th. So do yourself a favor, do your county FSA office a favor, run the tools if you still need to make that decision, and get in touch with them as soon as possible. Again, I've listed the URLs for the web tools, and as I mentioned, I will make this PowerPoint available if you'd like it. So these links would be in that PowerPoint, as well as on the FSA Ark County PLC website that we mentioned earlier. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk briefly about was the case for considering ARC IC. This is not an endorsement of ARC IC. It's just some things for you to look at that might make ARC IC work in the crop year 2019. Unfortunately, we don't know if it'll work for 2020. I've actually ran a calculator that I'm going to show you in a few minutes with a number of producers who had some significantly lower 2019 corn yields due primarily to weather issues, hail and straight line winds prior to harvest. And ARC IC did look like it would produce a payment for 2019. Given the fact that we don't anticipate a payment for corn in either ARC County or PLC, if you meet one of these criteria, you may want to consider ARC IC. If you had a situation in bullet 1 where you had approved prevent plant for a large number of your corn acres in 2019, you might consider this. This wasn't typically an issue here in Colorado, but it was a big issue in the Corn Belt and Upper Plains states. I know this is something that they're looking at. Probably the most common reason why you might want to consider ARC IC for corn in Colorado would be, again, bullet number 2. Production is highly variable from year to year on your ARC IC farm. And specifically, if you had lower 2019 yields. And when I'm talking lower, typically if you have an average set of yields in that 200 to 220 bushel mark or above, and you had 2019 yields that were 170 bushels or less, it might be worth looking at ARC-IC. I'm not going to talk specifically about points 3 and 4 because I really don't refer or relate to many of our farms here in Colorado. 4 might relate if you had vegetable crops, primarily in Colorado, onions or dry edible beans on your farm in 2019 that would reduce your base acres. You may want to look at ARC-IC in that case, but that's probably the only case that bullet number 4 would be appropriate here in Colorado. So what I'd like to do is refer you to another tool. Again, this is from the University of Illinois. It's specifically on their FarmDoc website. Again, you can see the URL for this site is on this slide. And again, I'll make this slide set available to those who want it. The tool that I would recommend you use is called the 2018 Farm Bill What If tool. And as you can see on the lower right-hand corner of this slide, there's actually that blue link where you can download that FAST tool. If you do download the tool, what you're going to find is a tool that looks like this. Actually, it's a series of macro-driven Excel spreadsheets. In addition to determining ARC-IC, you can actually also do a comparison between ARC County and PLC for your farm. You can also look back and the 2014 Farm Bill and see if you made the right decision if you want to do that. But what I want to do tonight is introduce you to the calculator that's used for a single FSA farm. There's also another calculator that would allow you to put in multiple FSA farms to determine if, again, ARC County might, or excuse me, ARC Individual might be an option for you. So in this example, I've got a Colorado farm in Logan County. This particular FSA farm only has one program crop base that happens to be corn base. And what this program will require you to do is indicate if you've planted corn 2013 through 2017, in this case the farm did, and then to actually put your actual yields down. Now you'll notice that in 2014 this farm had a yield of 99 bushels per acre. Per the Farm Bill, any yield that's below 80% of the county T, which in this case is Logan County, and in 2014, the 80% of that county T was 126 or 125.6. It also gives you the county yield for those particular years. And so if we're below the county T, per the rules of the Farm Bill, we're going to substitute that yield in. If you have a year that you didn't plant corn, you're going to get that that T yield substituted in. So what we're doing by including this yield information on this farm is we're determining then our guarantee, our benchmark guarantee or benchmark revenue. And so based on that yield data and the effective or the price that was used that year, that would be the market year average, we've determined that the benchmark revenue for this particular farm would be $714.41 per acre. If we scroll down on this template, we'll come then to the information that actually calculates what a particular price might be. You notice any yellow box with a blue number is a box that we can put actual data in. And so in 2019, we actually planted 130 acres of corn. There were 0 prevent plant acres. The yield from crop insurance data was an average of 135 bushels. We're going to plug in what we currently believe that market year average price to be, which we've talked about throughout the evening, to be $3.85. And so what we're going to come up with is our benchmark. 86% of that would be a guarantee. based on our 2019 data, we're looking at a farm revenue of $519.75, and so we would expect $46.63 per acre, base acre ARC IC payment. So again, in this case, because we had significantly lower yields in 2019, this actually was a farm that had some hail and straight wind, high straight wind damage, that the ARC IC program would make a payment in 2019. Now at this point, we have no idea if it would make a payment in 2020. The only reason, or only way it would make a payment in 2020 would be continual low yields, which again, we have no idea what those yields are going to be. We haven't even planted the crop. So we would be locked into ARC IC for the 2019 and 2020 crop year. It looks like we're going to generate an ARC IC payment in 2019. We have no idea if we're going to get a payment in 2020. But at this point, it appears that either ARC Individual nor ARC County is going to make a payment in 2019 or 2020. And so the thought process here would be, we know that ARC IC is going to make a 2019 payment. We'll take that payment not knowing if we're going to get a 2020 ARC IC payment, again, because we're pretty sure we're not going to get a PLC or an ARC County payment in either 2019 or 2020. So I'm going to stop there and ask if you have questions. This is a slide I've kind of alluded to throughout the evening. This slide has my email address. At this point, if you don't have this, you may want to jot it down. I would be more than happy to provide you with a copy of these slides and also the FSA publications that Tiffany had alluded to earlier. All you'll need to do is send me a request. The other thing we will do is we are currently recording the session, and so we would be able to give you a link to that recording. That way, if you weren't able to join us early on, you can review the entire program, or this is actually going to be an unlisted YouTube video, and so you can move throughout the recording and review whatever part of this presentation you might have an interest in. So with that, I'll ask if there are any additional questions that either I might be able to answer or if Tiffany might be able to answer for you. I'm not seeing any additional questions. I guess at this point, I would thank all of you for attending the webinar. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. Again, if you want any additional information, please feel free to send me a request at the email you have on the screen right now. And at this point, we'll go ahead and ask our technician, Ruth, to end the webinar and end our recording, please.
Thank you, Brent. I think that was very beneficial, and we did have a lot of participation. 39 people joined online, so I think that's a good turnout so far.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. Ruth, are you back with us to go ahead and shut things down?
I think she's in the process of shutting it down, yeah.
Okay, great.
Because your screen went away.
Okay, well, I just stopped sharing, so.
Oh, maybe that's why. Well, I'll stay on for a few more minutes just to see if anybody has any questions that they enter through the chat, but other than that.
Okay.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy that we got a good turnout. So
Yeah, I was kind of watching the attendees, and I think we got as high as 42 at one point. So certainly happy with that.
all right, well, I'm going to sign off if you're okay with that.
Yeah, go ahead. I just sent Ruth a text, so hopefully she'll catch that and get us signed off. So that sounds good. Thanks, Tiffany.
All right, thank you for inviting me, and you have a wonderful evening.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.